For centuries, the galactic empires ignored humanity, seeing them as primitive, insignificant, not worth acknowledging. But when the dominion of Vathal pushed too far, humanity sent a message that shattered their arrogance. A message written in fire, defiance, and war. Welcome to HFY Genesis. I put a lot of passion and hard work into bringing you the best HFY stories, and your support means everything. If you love epic tales of humanity's strength, survival, and triumph, then you're in the right place. Before we dive into today's story, I kindly ask, if you enjoy this content, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing. It helps me keep creating these stories for you and spreads the message of humanity's indomitable spirit. Now let's get into today's adventure. The stars above Horizon Outpost 12 burned cold and indifferent, their distant light piercing the endless black. Located on the fringes of human-explored space, the station was meant to be a beacon of expansion, humanity's quiet first step into the Vathal exclusion zone. For 2 years, the colony thrived. 50,000 men, women, and children had carved a life from the unforgiving void. Engineers built towering structures that gleamed in the artificial dawn. Scientists mapped the edges of the unknown, and families dreamed of a future among the stars. Until tonight. The first sign of disaster wasn't an explosion or an invasion fleet. It was silence. Control, this is Patrol Unit Theta 7. We've lost all external communications. Scanners are picking up something. Stand by, we're investigating. Then came the scream. UEN Atlas, en route to Horizon Outpost 12. Captain Elias Rourke leaned forward, his fingers tightening around the armrests of his chair as he replayed the distress call for the third time. Static. A burst of garbled voices, a single phrase, desperate, terrified. This is Horizon Outpost 12, under attack. The Vathal are... Screams, the sharp crackle of weapons fire, then silence. Rourke's jaw clenched. He'd spent 15 years in the United Earth Navy, fought skirmishes along the Centauri border, lost comrades in the Sirius Rebellion. But this was something else. They didn't even send a warning, he thought. Not even a demand. Just death. A quiet voice cut through the bridge's tense silence. Sir, we're coming up on Horizon's last known coordinates. Lieutenant Mara Voss, his second in command, stood at the sensor console, her face pale beneath the cold blue glow of the display. Rourke rose from his chair. Bring us out of FTL. Full sensor sweep the moment we drop. The ship shuddered as the stars elongated, then snapped back into focus. The bridge crew sucked in sharp breaths. Horizon Outpost 12 was gone. The graveyard Rourke took slow, deliberate steps toward the viewport. Where the colony had once stood, only debris remained. A floating field of twisted steel, shattered domes, and frozen bodies, drifting aimlessly in the void. No distress beacons, no emergency broadcasts, not a single life sign. The bridge was silent. No one spoke. No one breathed. Mara's voice was barely a whisper. 50,000 people. Gone. Then the sensor alarms flared to life. Captain, incoming energy signature. The debris field shifted. A shadow moved. No, several shadows. Rourke's blood turned to ice. They weren't alone. The Vathal presence shapes unfolded from the darkness, sleek, jagged, and unnatural. The Vathal ships did not move like anything human-made. They twisted through the wreckage like predators weaving through a kill site, scavenging, watching. Rourke's gut twisted. They didn't just attack the colony, they exterminated it. And now they're here to make sure nothing is left. One of the alien vessels turned, its biometallic hull reflecting the distant light of a dying station. Then, in an instant, it surged forward, right at them. Escape, and the message that would change everything. Evasive maneuvers, Rourke barked. Bring weapons online, fire if they... Too late. The Vathal ship blinked, not jumped, not accelerated, blinked across space, appearing just beyond their hull. We're being scanned! The Atlas's lights flickered, consoles sparked. Something was tearing into their systems. Rourke's mind raced. They were outmatched, outgunned. If they stayed, they died. We have to warn Earth. He made his decision. Jump now. Full burn back to Sol. The ship lurched as the FTL drive roared to life. For a brief moment, as the stars blurred and the ship escaped, Rourke thought he heard something. A whisper. Not words. Not a message. Just a feeling. Atlas, return to Sol. Huma. A warning. Sol System. United Earth Navy High Command. Rourke stood in the war room. Admiral Catherine Valmora's piercing gaze locked onto him. Around them, holographic displays flickered, showing the wreckage of Horizon Outpost 12. No one spoke. Finally, Valmora exhaled, her voice measured but cold. Atlas returned to Sol. Humanity is preparing its answer. The Dominion had ignored humanity's words. Now they would hear our war cry. United Earth Navy High Command. Sol System. The war room was silent. The weight of what had happened at Horizon Outpost 12 hung over the gathered officials like a storm cloud. Holographic projections of the destroyed colony flickered above the circular table, 50,000 human lives erased in the blink of an eye. Admiral Catherine Valmora stood at the center, her steel-gray uniform as crisp as her expression was cold. The faces around her belonged to some of the most powerful figures in human space: Fleet Command, defense ministers, the President of the United Earth Alliance. "We've been ignored for too long," Valmora said, her voice measured but burning with barely restrained fury. "They saw us as insects, an inconvenience, something to step over." She gestured at the wreckage on display. Horizon Outpost 12 was not a military installation. It was a colony, families, children, and the Vathal wiped them out without a second thought. Silence. No one argued. There was nothing to argue. Then the President leaned forward. "What are our options?" Valmora turned to Admiral Dorian Voss, the Supreme Commander of the United Earth Navy. The old man exhaled slowly, then spoke. "We make them listen. A single command. A decision that would change the course of history." The War Council's verdict. The assembled military brass laid out humanity's answer. Full-scale mobilization. Every available warship was being prepped for combat. Offensive strike. Not defensive posturing. Humanity would strike first. Make an example. The Vathal had underestimated humanity. That mistake would cost them. Valmora's voice hardened. "This is not an act of revenge. This is a declaration." They would not be ignored again. UN Titan, the spearhead of humanity's wrath. The UN Titan, the most powerful dreadnought in the fleet, hung in the blackness of space like an avenging god. 5 kilometers of reinforced battle plating, triple-layered shielding, and enough firepower to glass a planet. Captain Elias Rourke stood on its bridge, gazing at the gathered fleet. 600 warships, the largest human armada ever assembled. This isn't just a battle. This is a reckoning. As he watched, a transmission crackled through the fleet's channels. "All ships, this is Admiral Valmora. Today humanity takes its place among the stars. No more silence, no more waiting. We strike first, we strike hard, and we make them understand. Humanity will not be erased." A beat of silence. Then, "All ships, jump to Vathal space. Send the message." The fleet vanished into hyperspace. First strike. The Vathal Empire feels the blow. The Vathal world of Karthal was a thriving colony, an industrial hub nestled deep within their empire, a place they never thought would know war. The humans changed that in a single night. The first attack was silent, precise, and devastating. Kinetic rods, dropped from orbit at near-light speeds, tore through planetary defenses before alarms even had a chance to sound. Then the sky burned. From the void, hundreds of human warships descended. Railguns, plasma cannons, nuclear payloads. The ground quaked as entire cities vanished in pillars of fire. The Vathal fleet scrambled to respond, but they had never fought a species like humans before. Humans did not fight with honor. They did not fight for conquest. They fought to win. Tactical strikes crippled Vathal supply lines. Precision bombing runs decimated their command centers. And then, the final message. This is the United Earth Navy. You ignored our words. You butchered our people. Now, you will listen. The UEN Titan fired a single shot. A planet cracker warhead streaked toward Karthal's largest city. A blinding explosion. A shockwave of raw destruction. The Vathal had dismissed humanity as insignificant. That illusion ended in fire. The aftermath, the Vathal's first taste of fear. The Vathal Dominion's Grand Council convened in a panic. The ruling elite, a coalition of ancient, war-hardened conquerors, had never considered humanity a threat. Now, they had lost an entire colony in a single human assault. Emperor Zareth clenched his claws against his throne. For the first time in 4,000 years, his empire had suffered a direct attack. "The humans dare!" A general stepped forward, mandibles clicking with nervous energy. "They fight unlike any species we have encountered. They use deception, precision. They do not seek battle, they seek victory." Zareth's black eyes narrowed. "Then we will erase them." Across the Dominion, a grand war fleet mobilized. 1,200 warships, a force twice the size of the human armada. The Vathal believed they had already won, but they had underestimated humanity. Again. Zeta Prime. The throne world of the Dominion. The halls of the Vathal Grand Council had stood for 4 millennia, an imposing fortress of jagged obsidian and pulsating energy conduits. Its walls had witnessed the rise and fall of empires, the subjugation of countless species, and the expansion of Vathal dominion across the stars. But tonight, for the first time in its long history, the council chamber was filled with fear. A massive holographic display dominated the center of the room. Karthal burned. What was once a thriving Vathal colony was now smoldering ruin, its atmosphere choked with radioactive dust. Human warships had come and gone like ghosts, leaving only death in their wake. The assembled warlords and councillors murmured in disbelief, their segmented bodies twitching in unease. At the head of the chamber, seated on a throne of blackened steel, was Emperor Zareth, the unchallenged. For centuries, his word had been absolute. His empire had never known an equal, let alone a threat. And yet, humanity had dared. His claws dug into the armrest of his throne as he stared at the wreckage of Karthal. "This is unacceptable." Silence. Then, a voice, deep, guttural, cautious. High Warlord Sharath, commander of the Dominion's vast war fleets, stepped forward. "They do not fight like other species," he said, mandibles clicking thoughtfully. "They do not seek conquest. They do not even fight for territory. They strike, destroy, and disappear." His 4 golden eyes narrowed. "They fight to win." A ripple of unease spread through the chamber. The Vathal had conquered dozens of civilizations, but this was different. They had dismissed humanity as weak, as insignificant, as prey. But prey did not fight back like this. The weight of defeat. A younger warlord, Valen of the Red Claw, slammed a fist against the obsidian table. "You speak as if we should fear them, Sharath," he snarled. "They are primitive, an upstart race of mammals." "Primitive," Sharath interrupted coldly. "Then tell me, Valen, where is Karthal?" Valen flinched, but said nothing. Sharath turned back to the Emperor. "We have underestimated them. That is our first mistake. There must not be a second." Zareth exhaled slowly, his claws tapping against the throne. A single colony lost. That alone was not a war-ending event. But the implications. That was what disturbed him. The war machine awakens. "How many ships did they send?" Zareth finally asked. An intelligence officer, hunched over a glowing data pad, responded. 600 warships, Emperor. A murmur swept through the council. The human fleet had been half the size of the Dominion's regional forces in the sector, yet they had won. Zareth's voice was low and cold. Double the losses they inflicted upon us. The councillors stiffened. They believe they have dealt a decisive blow. His voice darkened, a growl forming in his throat. They believe they can challenge us. We will remind them why the Dominion has ruled the stars for 4,000 years. He stood, towering over his warlords. Assemble the fleet. 1,200 warships, a force of annihilation. Across the Dominion, the largest war fleet in Vathal history mobilized. 1,200 warships, planet cracker dreadnoughts, orbital siege platforms, shock infantry by the millions. The Vathal did not simply intend to win. They intended to erase humanity from existence. This would not be a war. It would be extermination. The human response, UEN War Room, Earth on Earth, the mood inside Fleet Command was grim. Captain Elias Rourke stood beside Admiral Catherine Valmora, staring at the latest intel reports. The Vathal fleet was moving. It was twice the size of humanity's entire armada. Rourke exhaled sharply. Jesus, they're bringing everything. Valmora's face was unreadable. They think this will be the end of us. She turned to her officers, voice cold and firm. Then we will show them what it means to fight humanity. The true reckoning approaches. The pieces were in place. The fleets were moving. And across the galaxy, one undeniable truth had taken root. Humanity would not go quietly. Zeta Prime, the last line before Earth. Zeta Prime was more than just a colony. It was a fortress world, humanity's last shield before Earth itself. The planet was ringed with orbital defense stations, its surface dotted with planetary artillery batteries capable of piercing warship hulls from the ground. Yet, against the might of the Vathal Grand Armada, it felt insignificant. 1,200 Vathal warships, twice the size of the human fleet, dropped out of hyperspace, their twisted organic metal hulls gleaming in the dim light of Zeta Prime's sun. The sheer mass of them blotted out the stars. From the bridge of the UEN Titan, Admiral Catherine Valmora watched them appear on the holo display. Her expression was unreadable, but her hands, they were clenched into fists. So, this is how they answer. The calm before the storm. The United Earth Navy UEN fleet held formation, positioned between Zeta Prime and the invading force. 600 human warships, their hulls dark against the void, their captains knowing full well that they were outnumbered. But humanity had been outnumbered before. Captain Elias Rourke stood beside Valmora, arms crossed as he studied the enemy formation. No fear, only focus. They think they've already won, he said. They don't realize they're walking into a graveyard. Valmora allowed herself the ghost of a smile. Then let's bury them. She opened the fleet-wide comms. All ships, prepare for battle. Fire at will. And with that, the heavens erupted. The opening salvo. The first human railgun rounds crossed the void at relativistic speeds, slamming into Vathal warships before their shields could fully activate. Entire sections of enemy vessels buckled and tore away, their crews venting into space. But the Vathal did not hesitate. Their plasma lances answered in kind, spearing through human destroyers in blinding arcs of green fire. Shields shattered, hulls melted. The first human ships began to die. Then the Vathal dreadnoughts came forward. Massive, biomechanical behemoths, each the size of a small moon, their hulls writhing as they unleashed gravitic distortion cannons. The UEN Titan shook violently as a Vathal dreadnought fired. Brace for impact! A shockwave rippled through the fleet. Human ships were sent spiraling, shields overloaded in an instant. Several were simply crushed, folded in on themselves, as if space itself had betrayed them. But the UEN did not break. All bombers, engage, hit them hard. The human counterattack. From the hangars of the Titan, a swarm of strike craft poured into the battle. Nimble, fast, deadly. Their target, the Vathal command ship. Human bombers weaved through enemy fire, dodging plasma bursts and missile volleys. Autonomous drone fighters engaged them, but the human pilots were better, smarter, more desperate. This is Red Leader. Torpedoes away. A dozen antimatter warheads streaked toward the Vathal dreadnought. The explosions lit up the void like miniature suns. The dreadnought shuddered, listed, then erupted. A deafening cheer rang through the human fleet. One down! Keep hitting them! The turning point, a desperate maneuver. But the Vathal still had numbers. For every warship they lost, they crushed 2 human ships in return. The UEN was bleeding. Then came the final blow. A Vathal supercarrier emerged from hyperspace. Reinforcements. Damn it, Rourke growled. That thing's carrying thousands of troops. If they land on Zeta Prime... Valmora cut him off. Then we stopped them, right here. A decision had to be made, and she made it. All remaining ships, on me. We're taking them head on. The fleet rallied. The last human ships surged forward, toward the supercarrier, toward the Vathal war fleet, toward certain death. The final charge of the United Earth Navy, the last stand. The Titan led the way, shields flickering, armor plating melting under plasma fire, weapons overheating, systems failing, but still fighting. We are not done yet. Aboard the Titan, engineers rerouted all power to the main railgun. One last shot, one final desperate chance. Valmora turned to Rourke. Captain, fire! The Titan's main cannon roared. A hyperdense tungsten slug, traveling at half the speed of light, ripped through the Vathal supercarrier like it was paper. A shockwave rippled through the enemy fleet. The Vathal hesitated, and that hesitation cost them. Victory, at a terrible cost. The human fleet had bled dry. Of the 600 ships that entered the battle, only 60 survived. The Titan was crippled, drifting without power. Zeta Prime's defenses were shattered, but the Vathal armada was broken. What remained of their fleet retreated. They had come to annihilate humanity. Instead, they had learned fear. The aftermath, a galaxy changed forever. In the aftermath of the battle, the truth was undeniable. Humanity had survived, and more than that, they had won. The battle was over, but the war was far from won. The remnants of the United Earth Navy, UEN, limped back to Sol, their ships barely holding together. Of the 600 warships that had engaged the Vathal, barely 60 remained. The UEN Titan, once the pride of humanity's fleet, drifted into dock at lunar shipyards, her hull scarred, her weapons silenced. Crew members walked the corridors like ghosts, their eyes hollow with the weight of what they had survived. Captain Elias Rourke stepped onto the command deck, a steaming cup of black coffee in hand, though he had no appetite for it. He hadn't slept in 3 days, not since Zeta Prime, not since watching thousands of his people die. The weight of command pressed down harder than ever. Admiral Catherine Valmora stood before a massive war table, watching a holographic display of the Vathal Dominion's fleet movements. Even now, the enemy was regrouping, consolidating their forces. And soon, they would come again. We barely survived Zeta Prime, Rourke muttered. If they send another fleet that size, Earth won't stop them. Valmora exhaled sharply, turning to face him. Her eyes, cold steel, unwavering resolve, locked onto his. That's why we're not waiting for them to attack. We're taking the fight to them. Rourke frowned. We don't have the ships. We don't need the ships, Valmora said. We just need one. She pressed a button on the console. A new image appeared, a classified schematic, marked with the black seal of Earth's highest military secrecy. Rourke's blood ran cold. The UEN Nemesis, the last card humanity had to play. The human gambit, A suicide mission. The Nemesis project had been a whisper in dark rooms, a theory in war councils, a last resort. It was not a warship in the traditional sense. It carried no fleet, no escort, no conventional weapons. It carried one weapon, the Apocalypse Drive, a prototype stellar implosion device capable of collapsing an entire star system. Rourke stared at the projection, then at Valmora. "You're serious." "Deadly," she said. "We jump into the Vathal home system. We detonate the drive. We commit genocide," Rourke muttered. Valmora's gaze didn't waver. "Number, we make sure this war never happens again." The room was silent. Rourke had killed before, on battlefields, in the void of space. But this wasn't a battle. This was a choice. If they went through with this, humanity would become something else, something feared, something monstrous. Do we become the very thing we're fighting? Or do we die, trying to be better? Rourke ran a hand through his graying hair, exhaling slowly. "Who pilots it?" "I do." Rourke's head snapped up. Valmora's voice was steady, but there was something else in her eyes. Acceptance. Resolve. "I started this war. I led us into this fight. I'll be the one to end it." She turned to the window, looking out at Earth, her home. The home she was willing to die for. "We leave in 24 hours. Get your affairs in order." The Vathal throne world. A rising fear across the galaxy. In the heart of the Vathal Dominion, Emperor Jareth stood on his throne balcony, staring at the stars. He had ruled for 4,000 years, had crushed countless species beneath his heel. And yet, for the first time in his long reign, he felt something foreign. Unease. The humans had survived. They had bled him. And now, reports whispered of something moving in the void. Something coming. His claws tightened against the railing. Humanity should have broken. Instead, they had only become more dangerous. And deep in the void, the Nemesis was coming. The Nemesis drifted through the void, silent and unseen. It was the most advanced warship humanity had ever built, not for conquest, not for war, but for annihilation. On board, Admiral Catherine Valmora stood in the darkened command chamber, her fingers resting on the edge of the Apocalypse Drive's control panel. It pulsed with an eerie glow, whispering of its terrible power. One activation, one push of a button, and the Vathal home system would cease to exist. Her crew worked in silence. Every person aboard had volunteered for what was likely a suicide mission. None had questioned the decision. They had all lost something to the Vathal. Families, homes, friends. And soon the Vathal would learn what it meant to push humanity too far. Zeta Prime, the throne world of the Dominion. Deep within the fortress palace of Emperor Jareth, the air was thick with tension. His warlords gathered before him, their insectoid forms twitching in unease. The room was filled with the scent of fear. "The humans have disappeared," one of the generals said. "Their fleet is crippled. Their worlds are defenseless. Why do they not surrender?" Jareth did not answer. His 4 golden eyes stared into the void beyond his throne chamber's great windows. Something was coming. He could feel it. And then, the alarms blared. The ghost emerges. The Nemesis blinked into real space, directly above Zeta Prime. There was no warning, no fleet, no battle, just one ship. For a brief moment, the Vathal command structure hesitated. Then the scanners screamed with impossible readings. Humanity's last message. A transmission cut through every channel, echoing across the Dominion. Admiral Valmora's voice was calm, cold, absolute. "This is Admiral Catherine Valmora of the United Earth Navy. You ignored our warnings. You slaughtered our people. Now, you will understand." She pressed a command. The Apocalypse Drive came online. A tremor rippled through space itself. The stars seemed to distort, bending unnaturally around the massive gravitational event beginning to form. The Vathal saw their doom, and for the first time in 4,000 years, they begged. "Stop!" Emperor Zareth's voice was frantic, filled with something his species had never felt before. Desperation. The choice. Vengeance or survival. Valmora's hand hovered over the final activation switch. Her heart pounded. This was it. The moment. The end of the war. The end of an empire. She could push the button, and the Vathal would become a distant memory. But something inside her rebelled. Would humanity be any different from the monsters they fought? Could she live with that choice? Her fingers trembled. Rourke's voice crackled over the comms. "Catherine, you don't have to do this." She closed her eyes, breathed, and made her decision. The new humanity Valmora opened a direct line to the Vathal throne room. Zareth's face appeared on the screen, for the first time, not as a conqueror, but as prey. "Listen carefully," she said. "We had the power to wipe you from existence. We still do, but we choose not to." She cut the apocalypse drive's countdown. The weapon powered down. Across the system, a ripple of shock, relief, and fear spread through the Vathal ranks. "This war is over," Valmora continued. "You will leave human space. You will never set foot on our worlds again. Or next time, there will be no mercy." Zareth stared at her, his expression unreadable. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he gave a single, shallow nod. The war was over. Humanity had won. But more importantly, humanity had chosen to be better. Epilogue: A changed galaxy. The Nemesis returned home. The war-weary fleets disbanded. Humanity had not only survived, they had proven that they would not be ignored. Across the galaxy, other empires took notice. Humanity was no longer prey. They were something new, something terrifying, and something worthy of respect. Earth. 1 year after the war. The stars above Earth looked different now. For centuries, humanity had gazed into the night sky with a sense of wonder, a hope that they were not alone, that among the distant lights they would find knowledge, allies, perhaps even friends. Instead, they had found war. Now the war was over. The Vathal Dominion, once an empire that had crushed entire civilizations beneath its heel, had been humbled. Their fleets broken, their rulers forced to accept the reality they had once ignored. Humanity would not bow, but victory came at a cost. In orbit above Earth, the remnants of the United Earth Navy, UEN, drifted in dry dock. Some ships were being repaired, others decommissioned, their hulls too damaged to serve again. There were fewer vessels now, fewer captains, fewer soldiers. 600 ships had gone to war. Only 60 had returned. The price of survival. Admiral Catherine Valmora stood on the bridge of the UEN Titan, looking down at Earth. She had been here countless times before, but today felt different. Everything was different now. She thought of the faces she had lost, officers who had served with her for decades, young recruits who had barely seen their first battle before their lives were stolen away. Ghosts haunted every corridor of this ship. Was it worth it? The question had plagued her every night since the war's end. There had been moments. Standing on the edge of obliterating the Vathal homeworld, hearing their desperate pleas for mercy, where she had nearly become the very thing she had sworn to fight against. She had chosen not to press the button. She had chosen to spare them, not out of weakness, not out of mercy, but because humanity had to be more than just survivors. A galaxy forever changed. Across the known galaxy, the war had shaken the balance of power. The Vathal were no longer unstoppable. Other alien civilizations, species that had once feared the Dominion, now turned their eyes to humanity. Some with curiosity, others with caution, some with fear. The humans were no longer an afterthought in the great game of galactic politics. They were now a power, and power always came with consequences. The Vathal response. A transmission came through. A channel marked Priority 1. Valmora accepted the call. Emperor Zareth appeared on screen. Gone was the arrogance, the cold superiority that had once defined him. He was still a ruler, still a leader, but he understood something now that he had never considered before. "Admiral," he said, "we must talk." It was not a demand. It was a request. For the first time in 4,000 years, the Vathal were not issuing ultimatums. They were listening. A new beginning. As the UEN fleet drifted above Earth, as Valmora stood on the bridge of the Titan, she realized something profound. Humanity had not just won a war. They had changed the galaxy, not through sheer strength, not through cruelty, but through defiance, through will, through the refusal to be erased. And now the future belonged to them, not as conquerors, not as victims, but as something greater, as a species that had looked extinction in the eye and said, "We are still here." And the galaxy finally listened. That's the end of today's story. Thank you for being here, and thank you for listening. Creating these stories takes time, effort, and dedication, and your support keeps HFY Genesis alive. If you enjoyed this story, please take a moment to like, comment, and subscribe. It's a small action for you, but it makes a world of difference for me. What did you think of today's story? Would you have done things differently? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. Until next time, stay strong, stay fearless, and remember, humanity always fights back.